It was early. The kind of still, quiet morning where the air outside feels like it's holding its breath. I opened the front door expecting a package, some dumb thing I'd probably ordered late at night and forgotten about. But instead, there it was, a plain brown box. No label, no name, just sitting there like it had been waiting for me. I brought it inside, set it on the kitchen table, and hesitated. Something about it felt intentional. When I finally opened it, the first thing I saw was a stack of old family photos. Me, Emma, the kids back when we used to smile like that meant something. On top of the photos, a small note, taped to the lid like a warning. The price of freedom is memory. Underneath, more layers. A printed hotel receipt from Shoreline Inn, dated 15 years ago. Her name was right there, Emma Rhodes, room 214. I remembered that place. We had stayed there once for our anniversary. Only, the date didn't match. This was 2 months before she left. Beneath the receipt, there was something that nearly made me drop the whole box. A freshly signed copy of our old marriage agreement. Annotated, even. My signature was scanned. Hers? Wet ink. The date beside it? From last week. She had been here. My breath caught. Everything about the way it was assembled, the photos, the note, the signature, the receipt, it was too deliberate. Too neat. It was like she wanted to confess. But not really. More like she wanted me to feel philosophical about it. Like this was some grand reflection on life and love. Not the evidence of a betrayal she buried in the past and thought she could frame as a lesson. But I wasn't an idiot. The ink on her signature was still fresh. And the message she was sending, whatever it was, wasn't just about freedom. It was about rewriting the ending to a story I hadn't even finished reading. Started on a Tuesday morning. Not stormy, not dramatic. Just an ordinary, dull gray day. The kind where even the sky seems undecided. I remember that clearly, probably because everything else that came after felt like my brain trying to rewrite itself in real time. But the start? It was quiet, mundane even. I had just poured my first cup of coffee, still groggy, still trying to shake off a night full of fragmented dreams and the usual silence that filled my house these days. The doorbell rang, sharp and sudden, echoing louder than it should have in the empty air. I thought it was the mailman, maybe another missed delivery notice. I wasn't expecting anything. Not really. But when I opened the front door, I found a box. Plain. No shipping label. No handwriting. Just a single, brown, unmarked box placed right in the center of the welcome mat like someone wanted to be sure I wouldn't miss it. I stood there for a long minute, holding my mug in one hand and staring at the thing like it might bite. Something about it felt off. Not threatening. Not exactly. Just wrong. Familiar in a way I couldn't explain, like déjà vu in cardboard form. I brought it inside. Set it on the kitchen table. Stared at it some more. I should have opened it right away. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I paced. Took a few sips of my coffee. Ran my fingers along the tape. Then stopped myself. I thought maybe it's from the kids. Or a neighbor. Or someone playing a weird prank. But no. When I finally opened it, everything around me stopped. At the very top, right there as if placed with ceremonial care, were a series of old family photographs. Not copies, originals. The kind we used to frame and hang around the house back when that house had laughter in it. Me and Emma and the kids at the lake. Christmas, 2006. A trip to the mountains I barely remember taking. Smiling faces, warm light, eyes that still trusted each other. On top of the stack, a note, typed, short, neat, taped to the inside of the lid. The price of freedom is memory. 7 words. That's it. No name. No return address. Just that sentence sitting on top of everything like a closing argument. I didn't even breathe as I moved the photos aside. Beneath them, more items, layered like pages in a twisted scrapbook. A hotel receipt. Shoreline Inn, dated 15 years ago. Room 214. Emma's name. Her handwriting in the guest signature line. The date hit me like a slap. It wasn't a vacation. It was 2 months before she left. We had stayed there once. For our anniversary years before that. I remember the place well enough. Blue shutters, beachfront view, overpriced minibar. But this date didn't match any anniversary. This wasn't a celebration. This was something else. Something she never told me. The receipt wasn't alone. Folded beneath it was a copy of our marriage agreement. The original one. Yellowed, brittle. But this one wasn't untouched. It had fresh annotations in the margins. Made in pen, her pen. I'd recognize that handwriting anywhere. Notes, corrections, clarifications. And at the very bottom, her signature. Signed again. Recently. The date next to it? Just last week. My hands went cold. It was her. She'd been here. Not just metaphorically. Not through memory. She had physically touched this document recently, deliberately. Why? Why now? I sifted through the rest of the box. Nothing else. Just the photos, the note, the receipt, and the altered agreement. But the way it was arranged, the care, the sequence, this wasn't random. It wasn't a keepsake box or some sentimental gesture. No, this was curated. Structured. Like she was walking me through something. A message. But the message wasn't, "I'm sorry." It wasn't, "Here's the truth." It was something colder. More controlled. It felt like she was trying to rewrite the past as something poetic. Like the affair she clearly had was just part of some philosophical journey. Something meant to be learned from, not regretted. That damn note echoed in my head. The price of freedom is memory. I couldn't tell if it was a confession or a threat. I sat down, the open box in front of me, and tried to breathe. For years, I had told myself there were no answers. That Emma left because she had to find herself, or because we grew apart, or because sometimes people just break without warning. But this was a breadcrumb trail, and I was being dared to follow it. And what stung the most wasn't even the receipt, or the signature, or the note. It was the realization that she had been preparing this. That she wanted me to find it. That she believed I was finally ready. Or maybe that she was finally done hiding. 15 years. 15 years of silence. And now this box shows up like a punchline without a setup. My first instinct was to call her. But what would I even say? "Hey, got your box. Thanks for the haunting nostalgia and emotional manipulation. Let's grab lunch." No. If she wanted a reaction, she wasn't going to get the easy one. I turned the receipt over, checked for anything I missed. Nothing. No additional writing. But something about that room number, it clung to my memory like smoke. Room 214. The curtains. The balcony. I had seen it before. Not just during our stay. No, that wasn't possible. Was it? I sat back in my chair, eyes locked on the receipt. I remembered something years ago, maybe a few days before she left. I'd driven past that hotel. Late at night. I can't explain why. Just instinct. And I had looked up. Room 214. The light had been on. The curtain had moved. Two silhouettes behind the glass. I had told myself I imagined it. My coffee had gone cold. I reached for the marriage agreement again, scanned the annotations. They weren't just edits. They were perspectives. Reframing certain lines. Shared property was underlined with a note. Conceptual, not physical. Fidelity clause had a single question mark next to it. Termination had a date circled. The week she left. Not legal changes. Symbolic ones. Interpretations. It was like she wanted me to see that she had rewritten the story of our marriage in her mind. And now, she was handing me the manuscript. Only she hadn't accounted for how well I remembered the original. This wasn't a surrender. It wasn't an apology. It was a redirect. A deflection. A curated narrative meant to make me feel like the affair was part of some existential awakening. Like her infidelity had been a form of liberation. For both of us, even. But that's not how this works. Freedom doesn't come at someone else's expense. Not like this. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the open box. I didn't know what would come next. But I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long sh*t. And whether Emma knew it or not, she had just opened a door I hadn't even realized was still locked. And I was going to walk through it. The box didn't just rattle me. It rewired something in my head. Like flipping a breaker and realizing you'd been sitting in the dark for years. I kept looking at the receipt, the signature, the photographs, but they'd already done their damage. The truth wasn't just in what Emma sent. It was in what it unlocked. Memories, moments, fragments I'd shoved into the back of my brain because they didn't make sense at the time, or because I didn't want them to. And now they were flooding in. There had always been signs. Small things. Things you talk yourself out of noticing. Things you excuse because you love someone, and love makes you blind in all the wrong ways. Like the sudden work dinners she never used to have. I remember the first time she mentioned one, maybe a year before she left. Her voice was light, too casual. Said it was a client thing. I remember laughing and saying, "Since when do you wine and dine anyone?" She smiled, kissed my cheek and said, "Just trying to keep up with you." Big sh*T. It was charming, disarming, the kind of thing you want to believe. But the dinners kept happening. Late nights, then overnights. Once she claimed she had to stay near the city because traffic would be brutal the next morning. She even booked a hotel. I offered to pick her up. She said no. I let it go. I remember how she started carrying 2 phones. Not at the same time, of course. She said she'd switched carriers, something about better data plans. But then I saw the old one still charged, tucked into a drawer she thought I never opened. I let that go, too. God, I let so much go. There were cash withdrawals. Not huge, but regular. ATM receipts that never made it home. Once, I joked that she was running a secret gambling ring. She laughed a little too hard and told me I was paranoid. "Seriously, Jake," she'd said. "When would I even have time to spend it?" She was always busy, always gone, always just out of reach. I remember a weekend trip she took to a team-building retreat. She didn't take her work laptop. Came back with a tan line in the shape of a necklace she didn't wear anymore. When I asked who ran the retreat, she just said, "Some HR consultant from out of state." No name, no details. I didn't push. I told myself I trusted her. But the truth was, I was afraid of what I'd find if I did. And now that fear had turned into clarity, sharp enough to draw blood. She used her maiden name more often than she let on. I found old mail once. Credit card points, hotel reward programs, even a gym membership, all tied to Emma Caldwell. I'd asked her about it, and she told me it was easier that way for travel. That her ID still had her old name, and updating everything was a hassle. But she had changed her name legally when we married. I remember the paperwork. That lie was so small it nearly slipped past me. And then there was the P.O. box. I found out about it years ago, purely by accident. A magazine had arrived for her. One she'd never read before, with a sticker on it showing a different address. When I asked her, she said it was for a side project, some freelance writing thing. Said she wanted a separate place for submissions to come in. I bought it, because when you love someone, you want to believe they have dreams, not secrets. But now I know the difference. And Mark, God, I should have seen it. Mark was always just a friend. An executive she met at a marketing conference back in '08. He was married, lived out of state, harmless. I met him once. Big smile, firm handshake. The kind of guy who always knows your name even if you've only met once. Emma lit up when he was around. There was this one time Emma was speaking at a leadership conference in Denver. I remember helping her pack. She was nervous, excited. "Mark says it's a great crowd," she told me. Mark says. He always seemed to be wherever she was. Chicago, San Diego, Austin. I found old photos on her Facebook. Group sh*TS from events, always with Mark somewhere in the frame. They stood too close, smiled too easily. Once I even commented, joking, "Tell Mark to keep his hands to himself." She deleted the comment. Said it was unprofessional. I didn't press. But now every one of those moments was clear. This wasn't coincidence. This was choreography. They had a pattern, a rhythm, a routine. And the year she left, the timing of it all lined up too perfectly. That hotel receipt from the shoreline inn wasn't a standalone incident. It was a piece in a chain of events I hadn't been brave enough to connect. She left that summer. No warning, no fight, just a letter on the kitchen counter. Said she needed space. Said she loved me, but couldn't breathe. I spent years wondering if it was my fault. Maybe I worked too much. Maybe I didn't listen enough. Maybe I stopped noticing her. But now, with the box sitting in my hallway like a bomb that already went off, I realized the truth. She had been leaving for years, and I had been helping her pack by pretending not to see it. Even the language she used in that goodbye letter echoed in the note inside the box. "The price of freedom is honesty," she'd written back then, close enough to the one she sent now. Only now I saw it for what it was, justification. She'd been trying to let herself off the hook, using vague, poetic lines to smooth over the cracks in her choices, to make her betrayal sound like growth. But growth doesn't require betrayal, and freedom isn't bought with lies. I started digging through old email archives, bank records, airline statements. I traced her conference trips. They always coincided with Mark's keynote speeches. Same cities, same weekends, same hotel chains. One night, I found a hotel charge on our shared account for Shoreline Inn, the same one from the receipt, but with my name listed as the reservation holder. Only I never made that booking. Emma must have used my profile, our joint account. She used my name to hide in plain sight, and I just kept looking the other way. Now, every locked phone screen, every delayed return, every sudden plan change. It wasn't just suspicious. It was calculated. She was leaving breadcrumbs in reverse, leading away from the truth, not toward it, until the box arrived, until she turned the narrative around like she was giving me some kind of closure, like a twisted gift. But it wasn't closure. It was bait. She wanted me to follow the trail, to remember everything, to relive the unraveling. And now I couldn't stop. The more I remembered, the more I saw the structure, the shape of the deception. And deep in my gut, a feeling began to grow. This wasn't just an affair. It had never just been about love or lust or loneliness. There was something bigger behind it, something that didn't fit inside that box. I didn't sleep that night, not a wink. I sat in the living room with the box beside me like it was a living thing, breathing slow and quiet. It had teeth, and it knew I wasn't done. At some point around 3 a.m., I found myself staring at the receipt again. Shoreline Inn, room 214. Her name, the date. It was seared into me now, like it had always been there, waiting to be noticed. I didn't know what I was looking for. Clarity? Closure? An undo button? But I wasn't going to find it in handwriting. And then I remembered something I'd buried. It was the night Emma left. 15 years ago. Or maybe the night before. Everything around that time is blurry. Like my mind did me a kindness and filed it all under Do Not Open. But there was one night, quiet, uneasy, when something inside me wouldn't shut off. I remember sitting up in bed, just alert, no noise, no message, just that awful gut feeling that something was happening. I got in the car, didn't even know where I was going at first, just drove. Turned corners like I was chasing a scent only I could smell, and I ended up outside Shoreline Inn. Back then, I didn't even make the connection. I told myself it was a coincidence. Some part of me wanted to see the ocean, or whatever excuse I made at the time. But I pulled into the parking lot, and there it was, her car, Emma's SUV, parked near the side entrance, windows fogged. And then I looked up. Room 214. The light was on. Curtains half drawn, and I saw them, two silhouettes, side by side. One leaned in, the other turned their head, slowly. I couldn't see faces, but I knew. I just didn't want to. I remember gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers went numb. I sat there for 5 minutes, maybe 10. Then I drove off without confronting anything or anyone. And I told no one, ever. I buried it, like a coward. Now, 15 years later, staring at the physical receipt, I realized that wasn't paranoia. That wasn't imagination. That was the truth. And I had been driving circles around it for a decade and a half. I logged into the old bank portal, the one we used before switching everything to mobile. Took me half an hour to recover the password. Once I got in, I filtered transactions by date, scrolled through the summer she left. My hands were shaking before I even got to June. There it was. June 14th. Transaction number 019842. Shoreline in $237.41. Credit card, joint account. Cardholder name, Emma Rhodes. The same day as the receipt. There was a second charge. Parking fee. Coastal City parking off, $18.00. It hit me like a gut punch. Not because it was surprising, no, I'd seen the evidence in shadows years ago. It hit me because it was real, documented, archived, buried in plain sight. She had paid for her own betrayal with the card we both used. The one tied to our shared address. She didn't even try to hide it. Not really. And I had been too afraid to look. Too wrapped up in grief and blame and the slow-motion collapse of our marriage to connect the dots that were screaming at me. The next day, I drove to Shoreline Inn. It hadn't changed much. Still had that half-renovated charm. Blue paint peeling. Office door creaking on a hinge that never quite closes. I walked in and asked for a manager. Told him I had stayed here before. That I was hoping to reclaim an old memory. The guy looked about 23. Polite, disinterested. I asked if they had logs or records that went back to June 2010. He smiled and said, "Sir, we switched to digital in 2015. Anything before that's boxed up somewhere, if it exists at all." I nodded, pretending I hadn't expected that. But I had. And I didn't need the hotel to confirm what I already knew. I went outside. Looked up. Room 214. I stood there for a long time just staring. Imagining that night from the other side. The curtains. The shadows. The kiss. I wondered what they talked about after the lights went off. Did she cry? Did she smile? Did she think about me? Or was I already a closed chapter by then? Sitting at home like a fool while she rewrote the ending? I should have confronted her. I should have walked in that night, knocked on the door, demanded answers. But I didn't. I left. And she did too. The morning after, I came home to an empty closet and a handwritten note. "I love you, Jake. But I need to go. Please don't come looking for me." No fight. No closure. No explanation. I kept that note for years. Burned it last fall. But now, in the glow of that parking lot, under that same room, I realized she hadn't just left me. She'd erased me. And she wanted me to feel like it was mutual. That's what the box was. Not an apology. Not a confession. A stage play. One where she was the narrator and I was supposed to find meaning in the ruins. I took out my phone and snapped a photo of the room. The window. The lot. And then I got back in my car and just sat there. I didn't cry. Didn't scream. I just sat still and let it settle. I had seen the truth with my own eyes, and still spent years convincing myself it wasn't real. She'd made love to another man in that room while I spiraled at home. While I worried about her mental health, her stress, her need for space. I had written her letters after she left. Sent them to an address she gave me, A.P.O. Box, of course. She never replied. Now I knew why. There was no us anymore. There hadn't been for a long time. And yet, there was something else inside that box. Something she wanted me to notice, not just about the affair, but about its timing, its execution, its design. Everything about her departure had been choreographed. Not spontaneous, not chaotic, planned, methodical, like she'd been following instructions, or giving them. And that thought chilled me more than the betrayal ever could. Because it meant I wasn't just cheated on. I was played, used, and maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the only one being watched. When I got back home from Shoreline Inn, it was already dark. I left the box on the kitchen table, but it felt wrong leaving it open, like it was staring at me, so I shut the lid. Not that it mattered. Its contents were already burned into my brain. I went upstairs, showered, tried to wash off the smell of that hotel, but the water only made it worse. Memories don't rinse off. By the time I came back down, it was almost midnight. The house was still and silent, but I couldn't shake the feeling I wasn't alone. I made myself sit at the table, opened the box again. That's when I noticed the flash drive. It had been taped under the inner flap of the lid, hidden behind the typed note. Small, black, no label. I don't know how I missed it before. My pulse quickened as soon as I held it. The plastic was warm. Maybe from my hands, maybe not. I hesitated. Plugging it in felt like crossing a line. Like once I did, I'd be agreeing to something I didn't understand. But the truth was, I'd already crossed that line the moment I opened the box. I took my old laptop, the one not connected to my main accounts, booted it up, and plugged the drive in. There was one file. No folders. Just an audio clip named Playback. MP3. I double-clicked. First, nothing but static. Then a voice. Her voice. Older, raspier, trembling, but unmistakably Emma. Jake, if you're hearing this. A pause. Shaky breath. Then you found the box. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But you need to know that Mark is gone. They'll tell you he moved. Or that he died. But that's not what happened. The truth is surfacing. The audio cut off with a click. Silence. I stared at the screen, waiting for more. But that was it. 24 seconds. The metadata said the file was created 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks. Not 15 years. She'd recorded this now. Recently. Which meant she was still alive. Still out there. And they? Who the hell was they? I replayed it over and over, searching for background noise. Anything. I thought I heard a car door slam at the end. Maybe a distant siren. Or maybe my mind was filling in blanks. As soon as I unplugged the drive, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. It buzzed again. This time, a text. You shouldn't have opened it. My heart jumped into my throat. I looked out the window, half expecting someone to be standing there. Nothing. Just the dark yard, the old oak tree, the streetlight flickering. I tried calling the number back. Straight to voicemail. No greeting. Just silence and a beep. I texted back. Who is this? No reply. For the first time in years, I locked every door, checked every window, drew the curtains. Then I saw the car. It was idling across the street, just far enough into the shadows that I couldn't make out the plate. Dark blue Ford. No running lights. No one got out. It just sat there, engine low, like it was breathing. I stood at the window for a long time, waiting for it to move. Finally, around 2 a.m., it pulled away, slow and deliberate. When I told my friend Tom about it the next day, one of the few people who knew even pieces of the Emma story, he offered to swing by and take a look. He's ex-military, cautious by nature. That evening, he came over, parked a block away, and waited. Sure enough, the car returned. Same dark blue Ford. No plate on the back. Tinted windows. Tom walked up to it when no one was around. Said later he expected to see some bored guy on a phone, maybe a PI, maybe a scammer. But the car was empty, and there was an envelope on the driver's seat. Sealed. My name written on the front in block letters. Inside, a single photograph. Picture of me. Taken through my own living room window. I felt the blood drain from my face when Tom handed it to me. I hadn't seen anyone near the house. Hadn't noticed a camera. But there it was, me sitting at the table last night, staring at the flash drive. Under the photo were newspaper clippings. All of them about a car crash from my teenage years. The one I'd tried to forget. The one that had K** led my best friend. The one no one outside my family even knew the details about. These clippings weren't from the local paper. They were from out-of-state sources I didn't even know existed. Each one circled in red pen. No note. No explanation. Just the photo and the clippings. My hands shook as I spread them out on the kitchen table. The memory came back sharp and fast. The rain, the screech of tires, the impact, the glass. I hadn't thought about it in years. Whoever sent this knew. And they wanted me to know they knew. Tom asked me if I wanted to call the police. I almost laughed. And tell them what? I said. That my ex-wife left me a flash drive and now someone's playing spy games with old car accident clippings? He didn't push. Just told me to keep my head down and call him if anything escalated. That night, I didn't sleep again. I sat at the kitchen table, the flash drive and the envelope side by side, and stared at them until dawn. I thought about Emma's voice. Mark is gone. The truth is surfacing. What truth? What did Mark have to do with me? With the crash? And why now? 15 years of silence. And suddenly everything's moving again. Felt less like a confession and more like a chess move. Like someone had been waiting for me to be in exactly this position before making their play. I opened the flash drive again, hoping maybe I'd missed another file. Nothing. Just the same audio clip. I tried running recovery software. Still nothing. But in the corner of the screen, under the Properties tab, there was a field labeled Owner. The entry said, Project Meridian, Asset 014J. Asset. Not person. Asset. My stomach dropped. I closed the laptop and pushed it away. Whatever this was, it wasn't just about an affair anymore. It wasn't just about Emma and Mark sneaking around behind my back. This was something else. Something bigger. And if the blue Ford was any sign, whatever I had just stumbled into hadn't ended 15 years ago. It had just been waiting for me to remember. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called in sick. I told my boss I had food poisoning. He didn't ask questions. I guess I didn't sound like myself. After hanging up, I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and pulled the box toward me one more time. The flash drive was still there, along with the envelope and the photo of me taken through my own window. I kept glancing toward the corners of the room like someone might be watching, even though I knew better, or thought I did. That's when I noticed something tucked under the bottom flap of the cardboard. It was wedged so tightly it took me a minute to even fish it out. A key. Small, silver, with a red plastic tag around the top. No number. Just a word written in black marker. Eldridge. I stared at it for a long time trying to place it. It didn't match anything I owned. Wasn't a house key, wasn't for a lockbox or mailbox. But Eldridge. I knew that name. It was the name of an old industrial zone outside the city. The kind of place full of rusted shipping containers, discount tire shops, and storage facilities that always looked half abandoned. We used to drive past it when Emma and I visited her aunt on the far side of town. She'd always lock the car doors without saying a word when we entered that part of town. So I Googled it. Sure enough, there it was. Eldridge Lock and Storage, 2 stars on Yelp, 1 angry review from someone who claimed their unit had a weird chemical smell. No online reservations. No digital check-ins. Just an address and an office number with a disconnected voicemail box. I should have told someone where I was going. I should have called Tom or at least left a note. But I didn't. I grabbed my coat, the key, and got in the car. The place looked like something out of a Cold War documentary. Barbed wire fences, corrugated metal units, and a sun-faded sign hanging at an awkward angle, creaking in the wind. I pulled into the gravel lot. There was no one in the booth. The entire property felt abandoned. But the gate was open, so I walked in. I walked row by row, scanning unit numbers. There was nothing labeled Eldridge. No tags that matched the key. But then I saw it. A rusted metal door with condemned, spray-painted in yellow across the front. It was barely hanging on its hinges. It didn't match the storage units. More like an old utility shed the company forgot to demolish. The lock was rusted but intact. I slid the key in, turned. The door groaned open, and the smell hit me first. Dust, mildew, and something else. Paper. Old paper. The kind that's been sitting untouched for decades. Inside it was dark. No lights. I used my phone's flashlight. What I saw stopped me cold. The room was long and narrow like a corridor that didn't belong. Lined from floor to ceiling with photos, maps, and documents. Pinned, taped, some curled at the edges, yellow with time. Others recent, fresh prints. In the center of the room was a corkboard the size of a mattress. Red string connected hundreds of pins. Notes written in different handwriting. Names, dates, faces, and at the very center, my name. Jake Rowe. I stepped closer. The strings connected me to dozens of faces. Some I recognized. Co-workers, former neighbors, even my college roommate who died in a hiking accident a decade ago. Others meant nothing to me. Just black and white photos, some labeled, cleared, others pending. One photo was of Emma, a recent one. She looked tired, pale, sitting on a bench outside what looked like a hospital or clinic. A red circle had been drawn around her. Underneath it, not the subject. And next to that, a photo of me. A candid sh*t recent, taken from across a street. My face was X'd out in red ink. Beneath it, a post-it note with 5 words. She was meant to stop you. My legs nearly gave out. I leaned against the wall, breathing hard. What the hell was this? What did they mean, not the subject? And why was Emma, my wife, the person I thought I knew better than anyone, somehow assigned to stop me? Was that what our marriage was? A mission? I moved along the corkboard, scanning for more. Names were categorized by initials, some under subjects, others under controls, field assets, exceptions. Next to my photo was a tag, 014J/elevated risk/surveilled since 2005. That was the year we got married. Surveilled. I looked around the room again. Dozens of binders sat on steel shelves. I opened one at random. Inside were transcripts, typed conversations, emails, even recorded phone calls. Some were mine. I recognized the words. Jokes I'd made. Arguments I'd had. They were labeled, time-stamped, and annotated. Emotional deviation noted. Possible trigger. Anniversary lapse. Another binder held handwritten letters. From Emma, or at least copies of them. Some I remembered. Some I'd never seen before. Each was marked with codes. Reviewed. Withheld. Modified. It was like my entire life had been studied. Filtered. Dissected. I wasn't just someone who'd been cheated on. I was someone who'd been watched. Manipulated. Targeted. I moved to the far end of the room. One wall was covered in Polaroids, grainy, instant photos. Many were blurry. People walking, faces partially obscured. One of them showed Emma standing outside the Shoreline Inn, arguing with a man. Not Mark. Someone else. Tall, balding, trench coat. Below the photo, Handler D13. My hands started shaking again. There were other photos. One showed me at work. Another outside my childhood home. Another one, Emma and I at our wedding. But zoomed in. From a distance. Like someone had watched through a window. And then, pinned in the center of it all was a folder. It was red. Sealed with a strip of black tape. On the cover,